Hi, welcome to the Personal History Hub. Today we're going to be looking at the explain why question. Okay, so this question is worth 12 marks. And as you might have already noticed by the pictures along the side here, that this question is absolutely crucial to understand as it appears on all three of your GCSE history papers. Okay, so there will not be a paper that you'll sit where this question won't be appearing on. So it appears on the main medicine section on paper one, so that could be they could ask you about anything spanning from 1250 to the present day, so not the Western Front section, the main section. It appears on paper 2 on the Elizabethan England section, so it could be on anything on Elizabeth, and it also appears on section A of paper 3, the USA, so it could be on civil rights or Vietnam. Okay, so you could get this question on pretty much most of the content we will cover as part of your GCSE. So it's really important that you understand this question because it does have quite a lot of marks attached to it as well. So let's have a little look at an example that we can work through today. So this is a paper 3 example that I've put up today, but obviously bear in mind that this will be there for, this question will be there for paper 1 and paper 2 Elizabeth as well. So you could get asked this for any of those. So if you want to have a go at some examples at home, that's absolutely fine. You can use this exact same technique I'm going to be talking you through today. So set it out in the exact same style if you're using this for paper 1 and paper 2. But this is a paper 3 civil rights example as well. So the question we're going to look at today is explain why the civil rights movement made progress in the years 1960 to 1962. You may use in your answer the sit-ins and the James Meredith case. Okay, so before I share a couple of top tips with you, let's just kind of break down what the question is actually asking us. So it's explain why question. So we're not really asked to make a judgment on this. We're not being asked to come to a conclusion or state our opinion. We're just simply explaining the reasons why the civil rights movement made progress. Okay, so make sure you properly read the question and you understand what the question is asking you. I would also as well bear in mind that a lot of these questions will have dates attached to them. So make sure you very carefully read the dates because for this question is quite a small time frame. We're only looking at events that happened in 1960, 1961 and 1962. Okay, so there's very kind of limited events that you can talk about. It's really crucial that you kind of highlight those dates in the exam because if you don't do that, you might make the mistake of talking about, say, the Civil Rights Act. Okay, that's in 1964, so that's not within the remit that we're looking at here. You also do get given 2 bullet points that you can use as 2 of your paragraphs. You can use them if you want to, you don't have to use them, but you must give information of your own. Okay, so as it says on the mark scheme down here for the 10 to 12 marks, so the top level, there'll be no access to level 4 for answers which do not go beyond the bullet points given. So if you only do 2 paragraphs and you only talk about the cities of James Meredith, you simply cannot get into that top level band at all. So you must come up with some knowledge of your own. Okay, just to bear that in mind. But you don't have to use them. If you can think of 3 of your own that fall within these dates and answer the question, explain why the civil rights movement made progress in these years, then that's absolutely fine. You can use 3 of your own. Okay, but I would recommend that you do use them because they're obviously there for you to use. So let's just share some top tips with you before we kind of break down how to structure these paragraphs. So you must write in a PEE style. If you don't know what that means or you don't know how to do that, I'll be breaking that down for you in a second. Okay, so PEE stands for point, evidence, and explain. Okay, so you have to state your point, give some evidence, so some facts, some knowledge, and then you have to explain. So by explaining, you're linking it back to the question, explaining why that event that you've just described or that thing that you've just described helped to further progress in civil rights between 1960 and 1962. You need 3 paragraphs, so you may use the 2 bullet points like I've just said, given you don't have to, but you must do 3 paragraphs. Don't try and do any more than 3. We'd much rather see 3 good quality paragraphs than 5 or 6 paragraphs with loads of different ideas in, but they're not properly explained. Okay, because it's all about properly developing your ideas, explaining it, linking back to the question. So we'd rather you just do 3 good paragraphs than try and get loads down and do 5 or 6. Okay. And you must make sure your knowledge is linked to the question at all times. So please don't just see the question and think, oh, this is a question on progress in the civil rights movement and write down everything you know. It has to be properly structured and it's got to be linked to the question. So remember to always bear in mind that there will most likely be dates attached to these 12 markers. Okay, so make sure, think what happened within those dates. Yeah. And you do not need a conclusion. Okay, so this is just simply asking us to explain the reasons why there was progress in the civil rights movement. It's not asking us to come to a judgment on it or which reason's the most important. We don't have to start comparing them, linking them together. Obviously, there's no sources or interpretations to use. So this is purely an own knowledge question, and we don't need any form of conclusion or intro. Okay, don't waste your time doing an intro. Just 3 key paragraphs is the best way to approach this question. Okay, so let's talk about this PEE style of writing and how to successfully P on your work. So the original point that you're going to make is the first reason why there was progress in civil rights between 1960 to 1962 was due to the Queen's persistent movement. I've simply taken the first bullet point here, and put this as my first point. So for you to make your point, I would always just reword the question. So because the question was asking us to explain why the civil rights movement made progress in the years 1960 to 1962, I've simply just reworded that and then stated the first thing that I'm going to talk about. That's all you need to do to make your point. That is your point made. Okay. And you need to have some evidence. So for evidence, give some example, describe what's going on. So for this paragraph, we will be describing what happened in the sit-in movement. What were the sit-ins? Tell the examiner. Don't presume that the examiner will know what the sit-ins are. You tell them. Okay, tell them what the sit-ins are. Then you need to explain it. So link it back to the question. So how did those sit-ins lead to progress in the civil rights movement? Okay, so linking it carefully to the question. So this is how you need to structure your answer overall. So I'll be doing a full example of the PE on that sit-in paragraph in a second. This is how you need to structure it. Okay, so start with the sit-ins. So state your point, as I've said here. The first reason there was progress in civil rights between 60 the Greensboro sit-in movement. Then come up with some evidence. Okay. Then you need to say how it led to progress. So linking it to the question, the explain part. So you can start that paragraph by, sorry, not a paragraph, you can start that section of your paragraph. So all of this red bit should all be one paragraph. This led to progress in civil rights at this time because. Okay, then I would give 2 reasons, 2 detailed reasons. You don't need to go overboard listing loads of reasons. They'd much rather see you develop properly and explain properly 2 reasons. Okay. Then this blue bit could be another paragraph. So I've done James Meredith for this one. You could do something else. Okay. Then the third reason that I've come up with for this date range and to show progress in civil rights is the freedom riders as well. Okay, so each different colour there should be put into one paragraph. Another kind of top tip or something to share with you is that you can be using, or you should be using rather, these what we call words of wisdom. So things like because, as a result of, consequently, furthermore, this led to. Especially when you're doing this bit here, the explaining part, the linking to the question. So try and be using these terms like as a result of, this led to. Okay. So let's have a go at actually answering this together. So I'll do the first paragraph on the sit-ins and break it down for you in PEE. Then I'll pop that structure back on and you can have a go at writing out, pause the video, have a go at writing out the Freedom Riders paragraph and the James Meredith paragraph. So I'd get your civil rights booklet out now so that you've got that knowledge in front of you. Booklet. Okay. So point, we need to make our point relating to the question. So we've already discussed this one, haven't we? So I said one reason why there was progress in civil rights between 1960 to 1962 was due to the Greensboro sit-in movement. Okay, that's my point. Don't need to really say anything else. Okay, that's it, full stop, point made. Then you need to add some evidence. Okay, so this is where I'm simply telling the examiner what I know about what the sit-ins were. So tell me what the sit-ins were. So I've said 4 black students in Greensboro, North Carolina, decided to protest the hypocrisy of being able to buy stationery in a store, yet not being able to sit and eat lunch next to a white person in the very same store. They simply sat in the white seat area and refused to move. By day 5 of the sit-in, 300 students had come to join in the protest. Okay, so nice and simple, I've just explained what the sit-ins were. I used my own knowledge to explain the sit-ins. I would add dates as well, so you could say this happened on the 1st of February 1960, just to show off to the examiner, to show that you know what you're talking about, you've done your revision. Then you need to explain it and link it back to the question. So give 2 detailed reasons as to why the sit-ins created progress in civil rights. So I've said the sit-in movement led to progress in civil rights at this time because firstly, it succeeded by ending segregated lunch counters in Greensboro in July 1960. This was aided by the huge amount of publicity that the protests received. The protests were visible and the horrific treatment of black people was there for the world to see. Most of the media attention it received was favourable and led to growing support for civil rights amongst white people. Even some white Southerners at this time joined groups such as CORE and the SNCC. The favourable news coverage produced support from black and white people in both the North and South. There were even demonstrations across the USA as local branches of nationwide department stores segregated their facilities. White people even began to join the protests themselves, meaning that groups like the SNCC, who were created as a result of these protests, could use mixed race groups in their protests. This would send out a powerful message to many Americans that now even white people were against the treatment of black people. This would ultimately lead to progress in civil rights at this time. Okay, so that's my paragraph on the sit-ins. So why don't you have a go now, get a piece of paper out, get your revision notes out, have a go at the next 2 paragraphs, or at least just one of them. So I'll leave the writing structure for you on the next slide. You can pause the video, have a go at writing that in the exact same style, the PEE style that I've just done the sit-ins in. So make your point, give some evidence, tell me what that thing actually is, then link it to the question, how did it create progress in civil rights? Okay, have you had a go? So this is what I've done for my Freedom Riders paragraph. So compare it to yours. Have a go at self-assessing yours now. See if it's similar. You might have said different points. That's absolutely fine, as long as it's in that same key style. All the points are true and correct, and they're linked to the question. So the bit in green is my point. So another reason for progress in civil rights between 1960 to 62 was due to the Freedom Riders. Okay, then I make my give my evidence. So I said in December 1960, the Supreme Court decided to integrate all bus terminals and facilities. CORE, doubting that this would actually have been implemented, decided to put this to the test. The idea was to send black people across the South on a Greyhound bus, stopping at the services along the way to use the newly integrated services. They rightly anticipated that this would produce anger and violence against these black people, which would then gain media attention. As had happened before with the sit-ins, the power of the media to further civil rights would again be harnessed. As anticipated, the Freedom Riders were met with extreme violence, even placing a bomb on the bus. Okay, then this red bit and the little pink sentence at the end are my links back to the question. So this is where I'm doing the explaining part. This event helped to progress civil rights because once again, media attention led to huge support for black civil rights, especially amongst white people. So much so, more protesters kept the rides going, meaning there were over 60 rides during that summer. The protesters continued in the face of extreme violence from the KKK and even the police, but they kept the moral high ground by not retaliating. Their determination and resilience paid off because on the 1st of November 1960, the federal government said that they would send federal officers to enforce segregation of facilities if states didn't. The southern states had no choice now but to desegregate. The Freedom Rides had been another success and had improved civil rights further for black people. Okay, so let's have a look at James Meredith now. So same thing for James Meredith. So in green is my point. The final reason for progress in civil rights at this time was due to the impact of the James Meredith case. So this is my bit of evidence then in blue, so telling me what the case is. So in June 1962, the Supreme Court ruled for the University of Mississippi to accept black student James Meredith. When Meredith tried to register in September with 500 federal officers, he was met by a violent white mob of 3,000. The mob attacked the federal officers, and this led to a violent brawl, resulting in the death of 2 civilians. Okay, then my red bit and pink bit at the bottom are my links back to the question, my explain part. As with the 2 other cases, This event was covered both on TV and radio. Even Kennedy spoke about it, so President Kennedy, raising further awareness of the appalling treatment of Black people at the hands of white racists. The media attention helped contribute to further progress for Black people, as ultimately Meredith was supported by the Supreme Court and the federal government, who ensured that he was able to attend the university and subsequently graduate. This close support from the government would mean that other states had to follow suit if they wanted to avoid federal intervention in the future. Ultimately, then, this would lead to progress for civil rights for Black people in this period because more Black students would now be afforded the opportunity of a university education in the South. Okay, so if you want to look at the full model answer, so if you want to pause it and have a look at how it would all fit together, then I would leave this on the screen for you. You can pause it, have a read through it, see if yours matches up, and then maybe have a go at some other examples at home. So you might want to have a go at some paper 1 or paper 2 examples as well, just to get a range of practice in. Okay, thanks. Don't forget to subscribe to the Preschool History Hub.